The following program is made possible by supporters and friends of Biblical Foundations Academy International.
Previously on Time Will Tell.
The first thing they did when they crossed over the Jordan River was to meet with God according to his time.
As it pertains to God's clock, the Hebrew word Chodesh for new moon is like the mechanism inside a clock that makes it work. Now that might seem like a lot of work for one Hebrew word, but in lottery terms, Chodesh is the money ball.
They probably don't want us to do this, but you're with me, so we're underground, you guys. We're actually seeing the very walls that have been covered over by homes. You don't see this in the Western Wall, but these are the actual stones.
Time basically was based on sunrise, sunset,
Okay.
moon,
Okay.
seasons.
Okay.
So you have the word seasons, but the word Mo'adim,
Okay.
the word Mo'ed,
Alright.
is from the word basically an appointment, an appointed time. So that's how they reckon time. No watches, eyes, seeing, understanding time through nature.
Can you give me a minute to explain something to you in black and white? I need your help, plain and simple. The Time Will Tell series has broken through the religious borders and caught the attention of people from diverse backgrounds all over the world. I've been given an opportunity to continue providing this type of information, inspiration, and revelation on one condition. I need some folks to stand with me beyond watching the series. Will you take a moment to show your support by giving a one-time financial gift, or better yet, considering a monthly donation from now until the end of this year? That's a total of 9 months of support and nurture to help us deliver the Time Will Tell baby around the world. Just visit the easy-to-use Give page or give us a call if you prefer, 612-293-0143. Oh, and by the way, thank you. I asked Yoel if there was any place else within the area of the temple that focused specifically on God's time. He took me over to the corner where the west and south walls meet. After showing me the actual sidewalk that had been crushed from stones that were thrown down by the Romans during the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, he wanted to show me a specific stone that was cast down and discovered by Israeli archaeologists during excavations that had Hebrew writing on it. Yoel, I have heard about this particular corner part. Can you tell us a little bit about this, where it came from, and what's the significance of this?
Okay, so where it came from is pretty simple. Up on top over there, where we have now the Muslim structure, identified based on these small rocks, we have, this is actually the corner itself.
Okay.
So you can see there's like a triangle here that fits literally into the corner itself.
Wow. So what's significant about the corner? And
What's significant is actually what we have here. It's not the corner itself, it's what's inscribed here.
Whoa, what is it?
Well, first of all, it's an Hebrew inscription,
Okay,
and based on the style, it's Second Temple.
okay,
So actually the exact same calligraphy they use in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
okay.
Okay, so we
So
actually
about
know,
2,000 years old.
probably a bit more than that. 2,000 years. Temple, Second Temple was about towards the end of it. What's very significant about it is actually what it says.
Okay, what does it say?
So
In Hebrew
actually-
first.
It says in Hebrew.
Nice and loud.
Leveit hatkiah lehach. It's
Okay.
actually cut off towards the end. So some archaeologists would actually say it means lehachriz or lehachnis, meaning beit leveit hatkiah. So lamed is used for the house of. So the house of tkiah. Tkiah is a blast of a trumpet or a horn. And lehachriz or lehachnis is either lehachriz means to announce, lehachnis means to bring in or to enter.
Wait. You're telling me that this has something to do with the blowing of the shofar?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what it has to do with.
Okay, so blowing the shofar, what they actually had, there's actually in the tractate of Shabbat, in the Babylonian Talmud, it speaks about someone who would go to this corner on the Temple Mount, either have a trumpet or a a horn, and they would make a blast from that trumpet or horn to announce the coming of Shabbat.
Wait, so you're telling me that this cornerstone has something to do with what we're talking about in terms of time?
Yeah.
The calendar?
Yeah.
The Moed?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to slow down? Tell me a little bit more.
Okay, so in the list of Moadim, besides Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, Passover, Shavuot, sometimes translated Pentecost, and booths,
Yes.
festival booths.
Yes.
There's also the Shabbat. Shabbat is actually called, in that list of Moadim, we also have, it says, Ele Moadei Adonai Shnitlu Otam Lemoadam. These are the appointed times of Hashem that they will proclaim it at their time, or when they should be proclaimed at their time. It actually includes Shabbat,
Wow.
the seventh day of the week.
Amazing.
Yoel invited me over to his apartment to see the view of the temple from his rooftop. As he was talking about topography, I was thinking about how to get him to take a road trip with me to an important place that would help me understand the Jewish journey regarding time. After some Middle Eastern negotiations over tea, Yoel agreed to be my guide. I could hardly believe I was traveling through the area where the patriarchs settled and the spies found clusters of grapes in the land flowing with milk and honey. The area I wanted to get to was in a security-monitored Jewish community that some people would call a settlement. Let's not touch that issue. Yoel was able to get me past the gate into the ancient place called Bethel, House of El, God. This is the modern cornerstone for the resettled community. Abraham and Jacob walked and worshiped in Bethel, and Joshua waged war here. To see children walking in the same community as the children of Abraham did thousands of years ago is amazing. To watch the military conduct exercises in the event they are needed is sobering. But what caught my attention was the 3 different synagogues, all within a stone's throw of each other in this small community. There on top of one of the synagogues was the modern equivalent of the temple shofar that calls the entire community together around God's calendar and His clock. I looked forward to eventually participating in a service in a Jewish synagogue with an entire community. I considered these synagogues satellite offices of temple headquarters in Jerusalem, so I knew they would all be on the same clock. After visiting the modern synagogues of Bethel, we discovered an ancient surprise.
Well, I got to take a little break from the project on time just to talk about this place. This is the traditional spot for what's called Jacob's dream, Genesis chapter 28. If I open up my Hebrew Bible to Genesis chapter 28, verse 19, it says, "And Jacob called the name of the place Beit El." Beit El, house of El, or house of God. It's a wonderful opportunity to be in Israel and to just go to these spots and the actual places, whether they're traditional spots or the actual spots. What's beautiful is we know that somewhere around this area is where Jacob had his dream. And you know me and dreams, I love to talk about that. But the real reason we came here is because of what I call one of the first in the history of Israel uh-oh moments. There is an uh-oh moment that took place somewhere in this area with a man named Jeroboam. Rather than me telling you about it, I've asked my friend Yoel, who's traveled with me from Jerusalem into Bethel. Bottom line is I don't get here without him. I would like for him to explain a little bit about the significance of God's time, God's clock, and the place called Bethel and a man called Jeroboam, who I call one of the first uh-oh men in the Bible.
At the end of the reign of King Solomon, he had a servant called Jeroboam, or Yerovam in Hebrew, who rebelled against the house of David and fought a war against the house of David for a very, very long time. One of the actions of fighting the war is establishing a new place of worship, specifically here in Bethel, which is also an ancient place for the Israelites, going back all the way time to Jacob, or Yaakov in Hebrew, and in Dan. So we're actually here in the area of Bethel, and it says here in the book of Kings, the first book of Kings, chapter 12, I'm going to read first of all in Hebrew and then we'll try to translate it. Second book of Kings, chapter 12, verse 32, and it says, "Vayas Yerovam Hag b'chodesh hashemini b'chamisha asar yom l'chodesh k'hag asher b'Yehuda, ויעל על המזבח כנסה בבית אל לזבח לעגלים אשר עשה, והעמיד בבית אל את כהני הבמות אשר עשה." So if we try to loosely translate it, and Jeroboam created a festival on the 8th month, on the 15th of that month, as the festival in Judah, or Judea, and he went up to the altar, and so he did so in Bethel to sacrifice to the calves which he had made, and which he erected in Bethel, and had the priests of the bamot, not the altar, of the bamot, the high places which he created. So what we see here is an attempt on God's calendar. He creates a new festival a month later, but it's on the 15th day, basically imitating Sukkot, but moving it to a different time, moving it to a completely different time zone, but basically creating a completely different new calendar, which has nothing to do with the calendar which appears in the Torah.
Yoel really caught my attention when he talked about Jeroboam establishing 2 places of worship away from the Jerusalem and creating a new convenient calendar for the people. As we walked and talked about the area, I made a decision. I needed to go to Dan to learn more about Mr. Uh-oh himself, Jeroboam the calendar creator. As I made the long trek up to Dan, I realized the genius of what Jeroboam had done. It took me well over 2 hours to travel by car from Jerusalem to the northernmost tip of Israel, where Dan is located. Telling the Israelites that they didn't need to make such a long trip to Jerusalem, but rather they could stay in their convenient, comfortable communities and worship God based on a new calendar and clock was the beginning of the end for Israel. When I arrived at Tel Dan, this place told it all. It was one of the most beautiful places I had seen in Israel. From the view of the snow-topped Mount Hermon to the constantly running river that provided cool, fresh water for the entire community. Dan had all the natural resources and a whole bunch more.
Somebody say, uh-oh. We are in ancient Dan at a place that all I can say is, uh-oh. And Jeroboam ordained a feast, and he offered upon the altar, sacrificing unto the calves, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. You all, this is it. We are in the place. This is the place that's connected to Beit El. Now we have Dan, the 2 places, one where he put a golden calf in Bethel and a golden calf in Dan. All I can say now is a picture's worth more than 1,000 words. I just want you to see what this ancient place looks like. Well, I mean, I'm not even sure how to explain to you the significance of this place. This is the only temple monumental complex for the ancient kingdom of Israel, and we're here. You're here with me. We're right in this spot. This is not some made-up place. Some of these stones are from as far back as we can even imagine. But I want to read again from the Bible in 1 Kings chapter 12. It says this: Then Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built up Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, can we stop for a second? Isn't that part of the problem? Jeroboam thought to himself, there are too many people, I don't want to preach, that are thinking to themselves. The kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of Jehovah in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. One he set in Bethel, we've been to Bethel, and the other in Dan. And this thing became a sin. The people went even as far as Dan to worship the one there. You all, we have traveled from as far south as you can imagine in Israel to as far north. We're here in Dan. And this place was a place where there was a golden calf, and even after the golden calf was gone, there were other groups that came and made this their place of worship. It is a high place that stinks to high heaven. Now, I don't know what to do. I'm going to try to contain myself, but you all, I can't help it. I've got to make a proclamation here. I've got to make a declaration here because I believe there are still people and places and organizations that are setting up false gods and calling them God. And this should not be. Bear with me as we proclaim that there really is only one God. Not golden, ain't in Dan, ain't in Bethel. This God is everywhere, and he will hold us accountable ultimately for these types of decisions. Let's make a proclamation. I want everyone to know today that I'm serious. Shema Yisrael Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad. He is one. He is not a golden calf. He cannot be put anywhere. People can't just be selected to serve him. He has a way, he has a will, and he has his word. Yehovah Hu Elohim. Yehovah, he is God.
Tell Dan had told it all. The question was if I had reached the bottom of the rabbit hole. Only time will tell. As much as I had hoped that this calendar chaos was limited to Jeroboam, I needed to know if there were other times in Jewish history where the calendar caused confusion. It was time to go back to the Israel Museum. There's a strange-looking building at the museum that contains ancient Hebrew scrolls that would answer my question. The problem was that there are strict rules against any kind of photography, so I had to leave my trusty second pair of eyes, my video camera, shut down for this visit. Sort of. My choice was to either buy stock photos or to get radical. You know me well enough by now to guess what I decided to do. Yoel agreed to travel with me to the place where these scrolls were found on one condition. He wanted to bring 2 of his sons along for educational purposes. Sounded good to me. The road trip to where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered became a field trip. The road to the Dead Sea really is scenic. I even thought about showing the kids how to ride a camel. I said I thought about it. Once we arrived at Qumran, we had a picnic and enjoyed the scenery. The boys were like me, wanting to get to the good stuff. But first we had to make a stop at the Qumran Community Museum. This time there were no picture police present. The community at Qumran separated themselves from the Jewish community in Jerusalem in many ways, none more important than their religious calendar. Since Yoel was teaching his sons, I figured a short on-camera explanation of the calendar wouldn't be too much to ask.
So here we are in Qumran, a small village that existed here 2,000 years ago in the Roman period, where a group of Jews from the Jewish people, not some secret sect somewhere or some group that we never heard of, but actually Jews who decided the calendar has to be slightly different. They decided that because in the center of control in the temple they're using a lunar solar calendar, which is usually what Jews used throughout the centuries, was not accurate for them, they decided to move here and establish their own community. They broke off of Judaism, broke off of mainstream Judaism, and established a community that was governed by a completely different calendar, a completely different idea. Everything that evolves inside the Jewish world evolves around the Torah, evolves around this calendar which establishes the Moadim, the appointed times. The moment we move them, the moment we have a different appointed time, we have a different appointment with God. Now remember, no watch. So how do we decide this? So we have a calendar which is based on the cycle of the universe. But how do you decide which part of the cycle? That was the point of dispute.
I had an urge to take a journey toward one of the caves to get some perspective.
Well, here we are, you all. We've gone all the way from Jerusalem, past sea level, below sea level, to this spot. Now, if we go any further, there's probably going to be some issues. So here's your choice. You can turn off the video right now. It even says here, don't go any further. It's dangerous. Stop. Don't do it. But those that are willing to come with me, let's keep walking.
It was definitely a lot further than I imagined, but it was worth the time and the trek up the mountain. I actually got a little inspiration on my way. Maybe it wasn't the best idea to be looking through the camera rather than directly on the path, but I was feeling adventurous again.
Well, you guys, I took the time to come all the way down to this community for a very important reason. We were up in Jerusalem. We traveled down the famous road toward the Dead Sea. We went past sea level, lower and lower and lower, to get to the community of Qumran, where the greatest discovery in terms of biblical information has ever taken place, the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'd love to come back and do something on that. But I think what I really want to talk about right now is the significance of this place as it pertains to our present project, rediscovering God's clock. And all of the wonderful things that the Essenes did, there's one thing that they did that breaks my heart, and I believe it broke God's heart. They declared that they would set their own calendar according to their own agenda. And then, more than that, they then said their calendar was the only calendar. And as a result of that, the people that were in the community didn't have an opportunity to see any other option. They decided that they would base their calendar on the sun, 364 days, and they'd add an extra day at the end of the year. Every single month would be 30 days, and then the last month would be 31 days. And then what they did beyond that is they declared when the festivals would be, the Moedim of God, the meetings of God, and they declared that it would always take place on a Tuesday evening based on the idea that it was the fourth day, Wednesday, and they knew that the Bible's reckoning of time was from evening to evening. The problem is, they declared when the meetings, the Moedim, would be, based on their agenda. Now, warning, I almost feel like I should give you, like that famous movie, The Matrix, the opportunity to take either the red pill or the blue pill. The red pill allows us to say, hey, Keith, turn off this video. I'm going to turn off this video. I don't want to watch this anymore. I'd like to stay within my own reality, whereas it pertains to God's clock, I just ain't interested. Or we can take the blue pill, the one that allows you to wake up and see just where we are. You all, I think we're in a very, very important spot. I believe that we're in a very important time in history where God is allowing us to grab a hold of things that historically we have not had access to. We have access to the Bible in a way that we haven't had. We have access to information, inspiration, and revelation as it pertains to time, as it pertains to God's clock. It's time for us to take the pill of reality. Come on. Let's do it. Let's uncover the agendas. But in the end, let's try to get to the biblical base for understanding his clock. Are you willing to continue? Well, I tell you what I am. Let's go.
As we left Qumran, I had suspicions about why the Essenes disconnected from the religious authority of their day and created their own calendar and clock. The answer was not within a cave or even the walls of the temple. The answer was within a man. I traveled through part of the West Bank to learn about a man who insisted that, quote, the great, unquote, be added after his name. Herod had a lot of baggage and basically dumped it on the Jewish people. Taking a trek up to the top of this mountain would help me understand the man that changed my perspective on several fronts. On a clear day, you can see past the Judean desert all the way to the Dead Sea where the community of Qumran is located. In fact, the gorge between these mountains runs all the way to the Dead Sea and was used in ancient times as an attack route for the enemies of Israel. Beyond seeing the view from the top of the mountain, I wanted the opportunity to see inside the stronghold into the man who was the architect, builder, and financier of many important religious sites, including the tomb of Abraham and the renovation of the temple. He was given the title King of the Jews by the Roman Senate, but not by God. His father was Idumean, and his mother was Arabian. He built a Jewish synagogue and a mikvah pool into his palace compound. He tried everything in his power to promote his Jewish religious authority, including appointing his brother-in-law high priest over the temple. Somebody say, uh-oh. He also added a Roman bath just in case he had any visitors from the Roman Senate. I think it's just about time for another proclamation. This domed room is an amazing architectural feat designed by Herod. The purpose of the room might be another story. Of course, in the worst case scenario, after exiting this bath, folks could walk right over and quote unquote cleanse themselves in the mikvah pool. Even though Herod was a master builder, he was also an extremely paranoid politician who was always preparing for battle, a la these stone cannonballs. He even built tunnels inside the mountain to escape in the event that his Jewish or Roman friends became his foes.
Well, folks, we're in Israel, and you know what I've been talking about. We're going to have to go to the bottom of the rabbit hole. So I'm always looking for opportunities to give you a picture of just what this looks like. I am at a place called the Fortress of Herod the Great, where he built all sorts of things of defense. He's actually got these tunnels down here. We're actually going to go down into the tunnels. Let's go down into the rabbit hole and just see what we can find. Come on, let's go. Okay, you see, we were up high, we're going down low. Do you want to keep going? If so, here we go. Can you believe this, where we are? I mean, look at around here. Look at what we have. We're deep down in the very belly of the fortress. I mean, we're down in the depths. I mean, this is amazing. Come on, let's keep walking.
I could hardly wait to get out of Herod's dark hole into the light of day and back inside my getaway car onto the next leg of our journey of rediscovery. I guess I can understand a little better why the Essenes stayed out in the desert rather than live under the religious authority of men like Herod and his posse.
I can hardly believe this. I'm here talking to you about something that I thought I would never do, and that is to write a book. I have here with me this book, A Prayer to Our Father, Hebrew Origins of the Lord's Prayer, that I wrote with my friend, co-author Nehemiah Gordon, an Israeli Hebrew scholar that lives over in Israel. He approached me about 7 years ago and he said, Keith, I've come across some Hebrew manuscripts that I really would like your help with. Now you have to understand, when he did this, it really was exciting because these are manuscripts that have not been seen by human eyes for a very long time. He had access to those manuscripts. He asked me to come alongside with him as a result of our studies earlier. We did that and we came across something that's really quite amazing. The most popular prayer in all of Christendom is what's called the Lord's Prayer. What we had a chance to do is to actually take a look at this prayer in its original language, history, and context. As we were studying this prayer, we looked at each other and realized something. We cannot keep this information to ourselves. So we came together and wrote a book called A Prayer to Our Father, Hebrew Origins of the Lord's Prayer, where we went to the actual spot based on the information that we have of where Yeshua, Jesus, taught this prayer that literally changed lives and continues to change lives. We've gone in and shared this information, the Hebrew origins of this prayer, with people of multiple backgrounds. One thing that's really exciting is we've been invited to China. The Chinese people have come and they've translated A Prayer to Our Father, Hebrew Origins of the Lord's Prayer into Chinese. We're actually going to be going to China to share this message. So I want to give you an opportunity to get a chance to see this book, the information in this book that literally changed my life and I'm convinced will change yours. A Prayer to Our Father, Hebrew Origins of the Lord's Prayer.
Join me in the next episode as we continue the process of discovery about God's clock from the Jewish perspective. Witness some surprising discoveries in the region of Galilee and meet a rabbi who will explain the significance of time from the Jewish perspective. Then join with me and my Jewish friends in a variety of synagogues that are all synced to God's clock for a biblical time celebration. This is only a small sampling of the many people, places, and things I encounter as we delve deeper into the Time Will Tell series.
Please remember, Biblical Foundations Academy International depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.